Welcome to another edition of The Goal Line Stand. Andrew Spaziano, Tom Condi in studio here on Thursday, the Thursday before Conference Championship weekend. Tom, how are you?
Good. Glad to get this show on the road.
Absolutely. Got a lot to talk about today.
Good slate of games.
Yeah, we got to talk about all the great matchups from last week and then touch up a little bit on the two games this weekend, which both have their intrigues in of themselves. Before we dig into it, Tom, is there anything you want to say to set the table?
I'm ready for a first ever Super Bowl matchup. That's what I'm ready for.
Oh, all right.
I'm thinking a little bit ahead, but we can talk about this past week. Let's go. Let's talk about this past week. What game stood out for you?
You know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be Vikings Saints. That was
all right. Yeah, that's an easy choice. Go ahead, elaborate.
So, I said last week that this is the game I was looking the most forward to, and it really took about 3.5 quarters for it to get to that point, but it was definitely well worth the billing.
I did say they were gonna feel each other out and pause, but I knew they were gonna test some things out. But Minnesota was able to capitalize early than I thought they were going to.
Yeah, I felt like Minnesota came out of the gate, and I really felt like they just kind of they pushed the tempo. I think they let Keenum kind of throw the ball around. I think their defense came out really aggressive. New Orleans really couldn't get anything going in the first half. I thought Minnesota's front was really overwhelming.
They got nothing in the first half.
Yeah.
They were scoreless in the first half.
Yeah, Breeze had a couple picks. I was having dinner when the second one happened, so I'll admit to you, I heard it was a tip ball. The first one was a great play by Sendejo, so I know that much, but I know the other one.
He had a limited practice this week.
Yeah, concussion.
Yeah.
So it's something to keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the Saints really got stymied in the first half, and it just felt like Minnesota was definitely in control of the game, but you can't count out Drew Brees.
No, and one thing I can take away from this matchup was this took away from an opportunity to talk about him and how great he's had for the New Orleans Saints. How has he been for the New Orleans Saints? He's a quarterback that comes once in a generation, and he's ultra talented, and he was put into this environment not knowing what was going to happen. Sean Payton was a new coach. He was going into a new offensive system, leaving San Diego because they had drafted Phillip Rivers. And what gets overlooked is he won a championship in New Orleans and made the New Orleans franchise what it is today.
It made them relevant.
Yeah, big word there. And that's what he is going to get shot down from in this matchup. He lost, so losers don't get talked about. Winners do. So if he had gone to the Super Bowl and won it, it would have made him one of the top-notch quarterbacks of this NFL history.
You know, it's really funny that you bring this up, because I actually had a conversation with some friends today, no lie, about talking about Drew Brees and how underappreciated he is. Because I think it's really when it comes down to the last 15 years, you think Brady, Manning, Rodgers. That's the three you think of. And Drew Brees is an incredible quarterback in his own right. I mean, if you look at the throws he makes, especially now, 39 years of age, you saw what he did against the Panthers and again against the Vikings on Sunday. I mean, the man's incredible. And if you think about what he's done, the changes in personnel they've had over the years, I mean, he just does it. It doesn't matter. I mean, granted, I'm not trying to downplay the talent he's had over the years. Marquise Colston, Jeremy Shockey, Jimmy Graham, now he's got Michael Thomas. So he's had weapons, but it's evolved and changed, and he really hasn't missed a beat. And I think that's something we need to kind of sit back and appreciate. Like you said, a generational talent.
Yeah, and champions get remembered. That's why down the road records will be broken. So it doesn't really matter to him about the records because he's only chasing one goal, and that's a ring. Another ring, rather.
No, absolutely. And Breeze really, everything we talked about, it really showed in the second half. I mean, he really got it going. I think the big key was they were able to give him time to throw. It felt like they were able to slow the pass rush up. And he was able to hit guys. I mean, Thomas had a huge second half. Thomas was the guy, it felt like. They were really utilizing his skill set down the field. Kamara got involved more in the passing game. They really were able to adjust and figure things out.
The fourth quarter for the Saints showed the brilliance of Drew Brees. And, yeah, he might have had a shitty first half, but he came back in that second half and was able to rally him for 24 points. Now, all that is great and then some, but when you still have time on the clock, and now the infamous play that we all know, great athleticism.
Yeah.
Great athleticism, but wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I don't know about you, but when I first saw the replay and they showed that back angle and they show Williams approaching, I didn't know what the hell he was doing. And what I figured out looking back at it is I think what happened was he mistimed everything. And I think he realized that as he was closing in on Diggs that, oh shit, I mistimed this. And he didn't want to get PI because he was going to take his legs out. So if he got there early, it's one thing if it's a ticky-tacky PI, they may not call it. But that was going to be like, I'm going to totally take your legs out from under you. And it was going to be called, and they would have been in field goal range. So I think what he was trying to do is get out of the way. And I don't know, maybe if he didn't realize that he didn't have anybody behind him. It's just unfortunate. And I know Williams, I've heard it talked about since the game. He's a rookie. He had a very good season, and it's unfortunate he's going to get remembered now just for that one moment. And, I mean, it sucks. Everything you talked about. The Saints were one of my darling teams in the NFC. Actually, the Vikings were the other one, so it was a really tough game for me. I couldn't really pick sides. And it's a shame the way it ended, but they do have a young core, and I think that's something to keep an eye on because I think if the team had gone 7-9 or worse this year, had missed the playoffs, I think Sean Payton, A, might have gotten fired, and B, Breeze is a free agent. I think he might have considered in the back of his mind leaving.
But the path to this Super Bowl was at its easiest.
Yeah.
I mean, you defeat the Vikings. Stephon Diggs gets tackled. Whatever else, incomplete pass, whatever else happens, and New Orleans has to travel to Philadelphia. Who says next year is going to be, it's not going to be the same team,
right.
This New Orleans team. I know they're young at its core, but it's not going to be the same exact team. No team ever is, year in and year out.
No, I hear you. But I do think that they have stuff to look forward to. I think, unfortunately, and it's to kind of bring your point about Drew Brees full circle, his time's limited. He's probably got maybe 3 years left in the league if he stays healthy and performs at a high level. And the opportunities like he had on Sunday are not going to, they can't be taken for granted. And unfortunately, they let that game get away from them. But, I mean, kudos to Minnesota at the same time because Minnesota, they executed the play. I mean, a lot of times teams in that situation, they panic. And it was a desperation heave by Keenum. I don't think there's anything denying that. But, I mean.
Did you see his reaction?
Yeah, he was in shock.
He was shocked himself, yeah.
Well, so something else I took away from that play is, I don't know about you, but when the ball was caught the way the camera was, I was like, get out of bounds. What are you doing? Because you assume there's a safety back there. You assume there's more players down the field. So I'm thinking to myself, dude, get out of bounds. What are you doing? You got to get out of bounds for the field goal. And then as he kept going down the field, you realize there's no one back there, and he's going to score a touchdown. Because that, just the way the camera was set up, it was a tight shot, so you couldn't see past like that 10-foot bubble around Diggs.
Yep.
So, I mean, it was an incredible play. I don't know if you've seen the video from the corner of the end zone there.
I don't think I did.
The play unfolding, and the place just goes crazy. It's like dead silent, and it's just like bursts your eardrums out. I mean, it's an incredible play, and it's rightly so going to be enshrined as such. But, you know, there's winners and losers, and it sends two franchises on two different trajectories. So,
last week I talked about Stephon and how much I enjoy watching him play because he's ultra talented. And you can blame it on the Saints for losing that, but that wasn't an easy catch.
No.
That wasn't an easy catch at all. Not many receivers could have climbed that ladder to catch that and then have the all wits still within them to go and score that touchdown.
There was a quote from Stephon Diggs after the game. He said, when I was running my route and before I turned around to make the catch, I took a mental picture and I said to myself, I saw the safety there and I thought, if he screws this up, there's no one else there. So it's just the situational awareness there can't be taken for granted from Stephon Diggs because, again, that's a guy, not only is he gifted enough to make that catch, but he's in that split second is able to recognize what he has to deal with and whether or not he should just try to go right out of bounds if there's 2 or 3 guys there, or if there's no one there, he can take the shot. And he took the shot, and it paid off for him. So
as small as the chance looked or as the opportunity looked, he was still mentally in the game.
Yep.
To go on further with what you were just saying. He still had the mentality to catch the ball, understand where he was and where the safety was behind him at that point.
Yeah.
And just keep running forward.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. No,
Minnesota advances.
Yeah. And they advance, and they're going to play the Eagles on Sunday. The Eagles grinded that game out against the Falcons 15-10, and it was a very close game. It was definitely a defensive game, if you couldn't tell by the score. I thought...
Shouldn't have been close.
You think so?
I think so, yeah. I think Atlanta's offense never got off the bus.
Yeah. You know, something I realized when I was watching the game is that Atlanta's offense only really... Well, they scored the touchdown, but the touchdown was set up by that muff punt. And all I could think of when he muffed that punt was last week going, "Get away from the ball! What are you doing?" And I was like, why does nobody tell their guys to get the hell out of the way?
Yeah. You got to have a code word. They teach that in middle school in Pee Wee football.
Usually it's something like poison. You yell that to the guys.
Something, yeah. It's something. It's usually 1, maybe 2 syllables, but it's a key word. Just like on a interception, when the defensive will say a corner gets an interception,
right?
They'll yell something out. Oscar, Oscar, fire, fire. It's generally telling all your other defenders, your teammates, to go turn around and start blocking for me. I'm going to take this to the house.
Yeah. So that happened in the second quarter, and that led to an Atlanta touchdown. So it was 10-9 at halftime, and I'm not really sure. What were your impressions from the game at that point?
Atlanta was going to come out firing in the second half, maybe run the ball like we talked about last week, them doing. Just driving and scoring points, even if it was a field goal or something, because they definitely needed to get off the offensive schneid that they were on.
Yeah.
Because to me, Atlanta should not be scoring only 10 points.
Yeah, no. With all the weapons they have there, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean,
even 17 seems low for Atlanta, but that's just me and my observation of the Atlanta Falcons recent years.
Yeah.
They've always been offensive powerhouses. I mean, shoot, Ryan was the NFL MVP last year. So it's just we've grown accustomed to seeing Atlanta scoring points and in bunches.
Yeah, and I mean, I think some credit has to be given to the Philly defense. They have a very good unit there.
They do.
And I think you have to credit the game plan. I also thought the Philly game plan on offense was better in the second half. I thought they gave Foles more opportunities to succeed. You have to keep in mind that Philly got a field goal before halftime, and that was off of a fluke play because it went off the safety's knee. And it got caught. Yeah, that fluky play where the safety jumped where he didn't really have to. And it just goes off his knee and gets caught by the receiver. And
I was actually watching with an Atlanta Falcon fan, and I looked him dead in the eye. I was like, why did he jump? Why there was no need to jump. It would have hit him in the chin if he just didn't jump.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was an oddly play that they were able to score 3 points on. But Philly did exactly what I didn't think they were going to be able to do. I didn't think they were going to be efficient. I didn't think they were going to be able to run the ball. Foles played pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, he played solid enough where they had to respect the pass, and he also didn't turn the ball over. I mean, that's really where he is in the position he's in. That's really all you can ask of him. And I think they did a good job of giving the ball to Ajayi early, even though they weren't having a ton of success running the ball, but it kept them honest. They also used him a lot in the passing game. And I just thought you use that. We talked about Zach Ertz. I thought they gave him some looks as well. They put their offense in a position to succeed and not necessarily to light the scoreboard up, but to control the clock. And that's what they did in the second half. They owned time of possession in the second half. And
what's the numbers over there? I see you pulled them up.
So they had the ball They had a 12-play drive in the middle of the third quarter that was for 5 minutes. They had one at the beginning of the fourth quarter that went for 7. So that's 12 minutes of the 30 right there.
Wow.
And they had a couple. So they owned time of possession throughout the game, but it came out kind of even. But I think that fourth quarter drive right there was a big factor in the game just because they were only able to get a field goal out of it. But at the same time, that put the game in a position where it was a touchdown game. So Atlanta was going to have to go down and score a touchdown instead of kick a field goal to win the game.
Yeah, Atlanta's a big play threat on offense, but even at that, if they don't touch the ball and have it for at least a couple minutes, I mean, that's the best way to stop a team is keep their offense on the sideline and just eat up time and eat up yards.
Yeah.
Play that methodical approach.
Yeah, and I think the problem is, and I mean we have to address the elephant in the room here, is I felt like the goal line situation for Atlanta was kind of a microcosm of their season. It really was, because I think everything we're talking about their offense all goes back to Steve Sarkisian and the fact that him and Ryan are on the same page. I thought the goal line play calling I'd give that probably a D at best. I thought first down, they try to pass to Julio in the end zone. I got no problem with that. Julio, that's who you want to be throwing to.
They've done that kind of mentality throughout this whole year, though. There have been examples throughout the season where they're fourth and goal or some odd, and they just fail.
And the play calling hasn't been good, because I remember a situation, fourth and goal, when they played New England, they tried that stupid jet sweep.
I mean, I understand you don't want to be too traditional, but you don't want to be.
You don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, you don't want to be what you're not.
Exactly.
Be who you are. Don't change your offensive scheme, quote unquote, because it's a do or die situation. Just be what you are, and you are a big play team, and you have 2 good running backs.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Well, and that's another issue with the goal line situation. So the first down play was incomplete. Second, they tried a stupid shuffle pass, and they tried that Teron Ward. It wasn't even Coleman or Freeman. Like, number one, I had to think, who the hell is Teron Ward? And number two, that's your third running back in a backfield that already has, as you said, 2 stud guys. What the hell is he doing in the game?
I don't know. I really don't. Maybe we don't see something that the coaches see in practice.
Ward strikes me as like a third down guy, so I get he's probably elusive and whatever, but, I mean, Devonta Freeman is exactly flat-footed. Tevin Coleman isn't flat-footed. I don't know.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, last year, Tevin Coleman was a successful pass-catching running back.
Yeah, he was actually having a pretty good game in the Super Bowl when he got hurt.
Yeah, I don't know. It is a good point to bring up. But I don't think that play is the right call at that time.
Yeah.
I really don't.
And the fourth down play was weird.
Sometimes those plays that you see get pulled off, ironically, by 2 big Green Bay Packer quarterbacks, would be Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Usually those are broken plays or they're just, boom, magically just open up and they just took advantage of a certain situation.
So what do you think about fourth down? What do you think about that play?
You got to keep Matty Ice in the pocket. He finds success in the pocket.
What I didn't like about it is rolling out and limiting yourself to half the field, but also, and I'm not saying Julio shouldn't be the primary there, but you basically put all your eggs in the Julio Jones basket, and he ended up slipping, probably got knocked to the ground a little bit, and it was one of those things like, is the ref going to throw a flag there?
There was a play, too, I think 2 or 3 plays beforehand, that he went to Julio even though the fullback was right in front of his face. And he decided to try and go up again to Julio.
Yeah.
And he missed a wide open touchdown. If not, he would have been tackled at the 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, it changes the whole field position
it
complexion.
Does. But going back to that specific play, you already hashed it out, but I don't like dwindling the field down to half the field. I mean, I know you want to try and get the defense to roll one way and then you fake it and go out, but Matt Ryan to me is not a rollout quarterback.
I would agree.
He's a in the pocket, read 1, 2, 3. Do I have time to check it down, or do I have a lane to run that ball in?
And something else I heard, and granted, teams will say this when they make a stop like that, but Philly said when they saw how they lined up, that they knew they were going to run that play, and they defended it pretty well, so I'm inclined to believe them. And I think that brings up a whole problem. If you're that predictable, your offense is that obvious, then there's an issue. And really the last thing I want to talk about related to this game is the Falcons. They're going to bring back Steve Sarkisian next year. They've already said that he's going to be the OC.
Gross.
Yeah, I agree. That's roughly my thought process about it. He doesn't get it.
Yeah, I just, when you have an offensive coordinator and your quarterback, they just don't blend well. It's just, and it's not even over ego. That's the thing. Like, it's not like they're two big egos clashing. It's just they're not, whether it's the coaching schemes or Matt Ryan playing outside that scheme, it's just they're not a good marriage.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the issue is because we're not in the facility during the week, but there's clearly a chemistry issue there. And the bottom line is, if the quarterback and the OC aren't on the same page, then it's broken and you need to figure something out. So I'm on the same page as you where there's something wrong there, and it's a mistake, and it's going to hurt the offense just like it did this year unless they really have some sort of an epiphany.
That defense is playing well, though.
Yeah, and the offense needs to pull up its end of the bargain.
I will take away, now that the Atlanta Falcons are done for the year, I will say this year they were pretty complete as a whole. Their offense, defense, special teams, they all worked in unison. Just unfortunate this past week, Atlanta's offense didn't show up as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree.
Congrats to Philly.
Yeah.
Philadelphia will host the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah. So that's going to be the NFC side of the equation for this Sunday. On the AFC side, the Jacksonville Jaguars were the team to advance when they went to Pittsburgh, a game that...
So happy about Jacksonville winning.
Yeah, I guess my whole take on it was I wanted to see Jacksonville win just because I was getting really frustrated about Steelers players just clearly weren't taking them seriously, and it's something that we didn't really go into enough when we record on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's billboard material. I don't know.
But I don't know, but like Le'Veon goes on Twitter the night before the game. It's like, I love round twos. We got a round 2 this week and a round 2 next week. And it's like, dude, you got to beat them.
Yeah, I don't know. I try and ignore that stuff because that's just...
I just bring it up just because they clearly just were asleep in the first quarter. That team was so asleep, and they weren't there mentally. They let themselves get into a 21-0 hole, and I'm sorry. I know Pittsburgh has been a team that's come from behind all year, and they've disappeared for quarters at a time and then turned it on. You can't do that in the playoffs.
No, you're right.
You can't just disappear and think that you could play 3 quarters of solid football, and it wasn't even solid football all around. It was they were able to come back and make it close.
Yeah. They had 2 touchdowns off of 4th down. Actually, you know what? This game might have been one of my favorite. Actually, yeah.
It was bizarre.
This game was fun to watch because what was that word you said about the Saints? They were your darling.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not a Steeler hater or anything. Jacksonville is a very surprised team this year. So I am on board with this Saxonville defense. I believe that today's NFL football still goes that defense wins championships.
I agree.
And that defense is special and it's ferocious. And I think they can win a Super Bowl. I really do.
I will say this much, Tom. As much as I do like that defense, they weren't very ferocious this past Sundays. They gave up 42 points. Granted, against the very talented Pittsburgh offense. I'm not disputing the talent they were going up against. I felt like their defense, they looked overwhelmed at times, just trying to deal with all that personnel. They couldn't get any pressure on Ben rushing 4, and Ben was just able to sit back there most times and just kind of pick them apart. And that's a very dangerous thing. It's a dangerous precedent to set. I don't think they're gonna give up 42 points necessarily going to New England. Spoiler alert: that's who's hosting the AFC Championship. But
their 7th time.
Yeah,
Seventh
in a row.
Straight, yeah,
It's
7th
absurd.
straight
We'll
AFC
get
champion.
to that.
Yeah.
But Jacksonville, their defense did concern me a little bit.
I see your concern. You can't let up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Normally, you would lose that game if you're
Right.
if you're letting the opposing team put up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Usually, you're gonna lose. For them, they were lucky. They scored 28 points in the first half, 0 in the third, 17 in the fourth. So they had the offense playing well at that point. So it is what it is. But I think you're right. I don't see them letting up 42 points against New England. It's going to be a different game.
Definitely.
But that's for game preview. Focusing on this game, Jacksonville had the opportunity for some defensive touchdowns. And then let's not forget the offense was playing really well as well. You had Leonard Fournette with a hat trick.
Yeah. No, definitely something.
Hold on. Hats off for the hat trick.
You can't see it, but I took my hat off. Because I do respect Leonard Fournette. He had a very good game, but I think you got to give a lot of credit to Nathaniel Hackett and Doug Marrone because they had some great schemes in that game. They put Blake Bortles in a position to succeed. I love that first drive. I love that play action. They were throwing little check down passes off play action. We're picking up 20 yards. And I just thought it was interesting. It's like Pittsburgh, you didn't expect they were going to do that. I mean, Bortles, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he has absurd stats coming off of play action.
Sorry, I have the whole game stats. You want those?
Yeah, I would like the game
All right.
stats because he had a nice game.
14 for 26, 214 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Yeah. And he made throws down the stretch that I wasn't sure he was going to be able to make. That deep pass to Keelan Cole. I think when he threw that ball, I'm not going to lie, I think I groaned. I was like,
But this is the Blake Bortles that the Jacksonville Jaguars needs to show up next week and the week of the Super Bowl if they make it. Because these stats don't look
Pretty.
sexy. 14, 26, 214, 1 touchdown. And you as a team scores 45 points. Holy smoke, right? Now you look at, Big Ben Roethlisberger, 37 for 58, 469 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 2 of those touchdowns were on 4th down plays. They're the loser.
yeah.
So it's just allow that defense to hold your opposing offense to whatever. You generally 40
And they're
some
a
odd
great
points.
team when they play from ahead.
Yes. Well, you have Leonard Fournette. You can just run the rock.
But even their defense can get more aggressive when they play from ahead.
Well, that's because you know the opposing team is going to just shotgun, drop back, pass, a little bit of run here and there. But this is the Blake Bortles that the Jacksonville Jaguars need. It's not sexy numbers, but they're efficient.
And he gets the job done.
Yeah, and then like you said, you like him in play action. That only works when you
can
have
run the
Leonard Fournette running the rock. Even T.J. Yeldon, 5 for 20, 1 touchdown. That's 4 yards a carry.
And Yeldon had to come in when Fournette was...
No, yeah, something like that.
He had to come in when Fournette was hurt with the ankle issue or the foot issue. And he did a good enough job, like you said, in relief. And T.J. Yeldon's a guy that I think kind of gets overlooked. Like, he was a second-round pick. He's not a bad talent. He's just behind Leonard Fournette, who's like an elite talent.
He was their starter at one point last year.
Yeah.
Or 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago because they brought in Chris Ivory, and that kind of failed.
There was another running back they had with him, though.
Denard Robinson.
Yes, thank you.
Shoelace, Michigan.
Yes, thank you.
But they definitely have a good punch there because I think Yeldon's a good pass catcher. Fournette's a decent pass catcher himself, but Yeldon's a good change of pace guy to put in there for Fournette.
Because he's speedy.
Yeah. Fournette can run, but he's more physical. than
Yeah,
Yeldon is.
he's more of your bell cow type. Give the rock 25 plus times.
Yeah,
Let him drag out those defensive tackles and linebackers, tire them out for that fourth quarter.
absolutely. So the last thing I kind of want to touch on before we go and talk about the Titans Patriots is I just thought there was some game management from the Pittsburgh sideline that was questionable. You mentioned those 2 fourth down plays they got touchdowns out of. The other two, that pitch to Le'Veon Bell was horrendous. I just didn't understand that. That defense has so much speed. Why on earth would you go wide against them when you need a yard?
Yeah, I remember the Buffalo game. Tony Romo, Jim Nantz, they were talking about Jacksonville's defense being semi-vulnerable running it up the gut.
Yeah. And they are. Their stats support that. When they traded for Marcel Darius, they got better, but they're still not a great team against the run. Le'Veon Bell had success running the ball up the middle towards the middle and end portion of the game, especially when they started running draws and they started letting that aggressive defense run by them. They got the job done with that, so it was curious to me, why are you trying to run wide? And then they had the other fourth down where they tried that crossing route to Schuster. I didn't necessarily think it was like a terrible play design, but for me it was like, you need a yard and your quarterback is like 255 and he's huge. Why don't you just sneak it and get a yard?
Wasn't he on the injured report? Isn't he a little bit banged up?
Probably, but I just think he can't sneak for a yard. I mean, it's playoff time.
I'm curious for the play reads on that, because I wonder if Juju was the first read, second read. I'm curious about that. Because fourth down, I'm looking at AB, Le'Veon, and then Juju at best. I mean, even Martavis Bryant, and I'm still a big fan of Martavis Bryant.
Yeah, he had a big catch on one of those fourth downs.
Yeah, and that play just cements like what he can bring to a team, even if it's not the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just a big play waiting to happen, speedy, tall receiver. I like him.
The Steelers have a ton of offensive firepower, and that really can't be disputed. The issue is just they just don't seem to be able to get it done in the big moment. You can say it's lack of focus. You can say it's poor preparation from the coaching staff. It's just disappointing. There's so much potential there, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They have probably the best stable of receivers right now, and I know they're really up against the cap. They only have like $2 million of cap room coming into next year, and they don't. That's without Le'Veon Bell being under contract, so they have to trim some fat. So I don't know how well it's going to hold up. They have a lot of money tied up in their offensive line, defensive line. So it's going to be very interesting for them going forward. But they're going to really, I think, have to do some self-reflection this offseason and realize if we want to be champions, we need to understand what we need to do to be champions, because they have the talent to be a Super Bowl team, and they just don't seem to be able to get it done in the playoffs.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I didn't know about their contract situation, their salary cap. I know about Le'Veon and whatnot, but that is a little tidbit of good knowledge to have.
Yeah, I heard that during the week, and I was as shocked as you are. I mean, it's very interesting whenever a team kind of gets in cap hell, and especially when they have that much talent. So I'm curious to see what direction they go in.
Yeah.
You got any other thoughts on the Steelers and the Jags before we talk about New England and Tennessee?
Go Jacksonville.
So, as mentioned before, the Jaguars will be going to New England because the Patriots handled the Titans pretty well.
It was shellacking.
Hey, the first quarter was competitive. The first quarter had me a little worried.
Really?
Yeah, I thought.
Sorry, hold on. Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I
right.
thought Tennessee, they went up 7-0. The thing that I thought they were doing well to start the game was I thought their front was winning on defense. I thought they were pushing the pocket a little bit. They were getting some pressure. The thing that blows my mind, they only dressed 4 defensive linemen. And New England in the second quarter said, we're going to go up-tempo because you guys are going to get freaking exhausted and you don't have anybody to switch them with. And that's what they did, and they didn't really have an answer to that. And I felt like once New England got their stride going, and I know there's a lot of controversy because there were some crappy officiating calls in the game, I think those things combined, because I think Tennessee was kind of on their heels, and then they had some calls go against them. I think it just broke their will.
Tennessee couldn't get the run going.
No.
They really couldn't. You had Mariota leading the team in yards ran, 37 on 4 attempts. Derrick Henry couldn't do anything. 12 attempts for 28 yards. That's
Yeah, and I think
that's what Tennessee is based upon, is running the ball and working Mariota to the outside and running passes pretty much.
Definitely.
Pass protection, rolling them outside.
Yep.
And just going through the reads.
They like utilizing that moving pocket.
Yep.
The thing that we touched on for previewing the game that New England did is they stopped the run. They said, Marcus, you're going to beat us through the air. And he did on that drive. They went 95 yards or something like that in that first touchdown drive. So he kind of showed them that he could do it. I think between New England's offense getting it going, and I know they had an injury, Tennessee, on the offensive line. And something that Tennessee has struggled with all year is get pressure coming from the inside of the offensive line. And that really showed in the second half. New England had 8 sacks. And as somebody who watches a lot of New England games, the fact that they could get 8 sacks in a game blows my mind. Like that baffles me, because they've had such pass rushing issues this year.
That goes to show how important DeMarco Murray is to this Tennessee Titans passing offense as a whole. Because you can be a great running back who can run the ball in between the tackles, outside the tackles. You may be a running back who can catch the ball. But the ones that survive and can play all 3 downs are the ones who can pass protect as well.
Yeah.
And that's what DeMarco Murray brings to the table. I would almost guarantee if Murray was playing this game, you would have half the sacks that you had at the box score.
I could buy it. I just think that the Titans, at the end of the day, have to be happy with their season, because I think they did. I don't know if they necessarily exceeded expectations, because I think people thought they would be a playoff contender coming in. But just the way their season played out, they kind of snuck into the playoffs. They almost missed the playoffs because they lost 3 out of 4 down the stretch. But they got in. They beat the Chiefs. They upset them. I think they showed a lot of tenacity in that game to be able to come back and do that. And, I mean, you lost to New England. I mean, they're not the first nor the last team that was going to lose to New England in New England. I mean, it happens. They were definitely outmatched personnel-wise. But 2 takeaways, I think, for them is, one, I thought Corey Davis kind of had a coming-out party.
I called it.
You
called
did.
it.
You did.
I said, watch out for him.
And he really showed why he was the 5th pick in the draft. He has a lot of skill.
5 receptions, 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
And he had that first one he had against Malcolm Butler was gorgeous, one-handed.
Yeah.
Butler, who was holding his other hand so he couldn't extend it for the ball. Yeah, he had a really good game, and I think that shows what he can be for Tennessee. Tennessee lacks outside options. That's something that's been a struggle for the team in the last few years. I like Rashard Matthews as kind of an over-the-middle slot guy, but he's not an outside receiver. Eric Decker doesn't look like he's half the player he used to be. Delaney Walker's a good tight end, but he's another guy that's going to eat the middle of the field. Corey Davis has a skill set that's desperately needed for that team, and I think that was encouraging at the very least to see that against a good team, against a team that is very good schematically and has some good players in the secondary, that he was able to exploit them.
Especially when you look at the fact that he missed the first half of the season.
Yeah.
He didn't come back until week 10, week 11.
And I think that's kind of why he fell off everyone's radar, because you had Juju in Pittsburgh, you had Kamara in New Orleans, you had other rookies on the offensive side of the ball that were lighting it up, whereas he was rehabbing for the injury and also trying to adjust to playing in the NFL as a receiver.
So that is a good look for Tennessee, seeing what type of damage Corey Davis and Mariota can do playing together, and walking into this offseason, they can just build upon what they have in the playoff game.
Definitely. And walking into their offseason without their head coach, which is the other point I wanted to bring up, they fired Mike Mularkey, or it was framed as a mutual parting of ways. From what I've heard about the situation is that they were going to extend him, and they really sat down and had a conversation about how the future of the team and how they wanted to approach things, and it didn't match up, and they let him go. I think they want to go after Josh McDaniels, and McDaniels is the front runner for the Colts job.
I thought he already committed.
No, he can't
all right.
officially commit because they're still in the playoffs.
Oh, okay.
So, but he's linked to the Colts. Like
Okay.
Patricia's linked to the Lions. That's why.
I knew that.
Yeah, and Schwartz is
A favorite for the Giants, right?
Yeah, him and Shermer too. So all those guys are still in the playoffs. So that's why a lot of these jobs are vacant.
All right.
But I actually don't mind them getting rid of Malarkey. To be honest with you, I think it's come more obvious as I've broken down Tennessee more over the last few weeks, the last week of the regular season, the 2 playoff games, that I think he's an issue with Mariota's development. I don't know if he knows how to use him correctly. Mariota, as you've talked about and I've talked about, has a particular set of skills. He's mobile. He likes to get outside the pocket and use his athleticism, and I just don't think he knows how to utilize him. And I think they need to search carefully and find an offensive mind who's creative and lets him kind of be himself. I don't like when coaches take mobile quarterbacks. We saw it with Robert Griffin. You don't take a guy who's naturally gifted to run the ball and take away his legs. I think that's really just locking down somebody who's comfortable playing that way. I understand you don't want him to absorb hits, but if you're smart with your body, know when to slide and whatever, I think it's a perfectly fine way in 2017-18 to play football.
Some of these quarterbacks don't know when to slide, though. That's the thing. Some of these coaches are trying to save a player from themselves because they might take an unnecessary crack or decide to take a hit for that extra yard than to go out of bounds and not get hit. It's a catch-22 because then their career won't last 12 years. Their career will last 6 years or 5 years.
Right. Granted, that's a good point, and I just think it's going to be a very interesting coaching search because the market is so open right now with so many vacancies. I want to see who Tennessee can get down there because I think there's potential on both sides of the ball. There's some good foundation pieces, and I think they need the right guy in there to make it work.
I personally don't like McDaniels.
I think McDaniels is a good offensive mind, but I don't think you can discount the problems he had in Denver.
And that's just, I'm going off of his last head coaching job.
And it's fair.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not a big fan. I would feel bad for Tennessee if whoever team picks him up, I feel bad for. I wouldn't want to see him go to Indy neither.
I think he needs to learn from his mistakes, but this is also the man who picked Tim Tebow in the first round. So you have to live with that. You have to live with the mistakes you made, and I hope that in 7 or 8 years since he coached Denver, he's learned some things.
Maybe.
I hope so.
He goes, watch, he'll go to Indy, keep Jacoby, and trade Andrew Luck. I'm ready. Wherever he goes, I'm just ready for something
I mean,
dumb.
it wouldn't.
I'm just ready for it. I'm sorry. Some people don't like that word, but I'm ready for him to do something dumb. And I feel bad for that franchise because they're going to set that franchise back because he went and drafted Tim Tebow in the first. He did, ugh.
My closing thought on that is, no, honestly, but if you look at Belichick coaches that go out into the field, they don't have a great track record. And your point is valid in the fact that he's not a slam dunk. It's a risk, and I don't think people understand the risk they're taking. I think they think they're getting a sure thing, and it's not a sure thing. So I do agree with you there. I don't think you can do a Tebow kind of ever your second time around, or you're just ridiculous. But we'll see. It's gonna be an interesting coaching search for a lot of teams, and it's definitely gonna be something we're gonna explore on a future pod because, it's a big story out there, and it's gonna be really the only story once we get done with football here. And unfortunately, we only have 2 weeks of football left, one of which is this Sunday, Conference Championship weekend. Jaguars, Patriots, Vikings, Eagles. The early game is the Patriots game. That's at 3:05 in Foxborough.
What's the weather? What's the weather going to be? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it's actually supposed to be like kind of nice. I think it's supposed to be like 50-ish. It's supposed to be really cold in Philly.
Wow.
It's supposed to be 46 in Boston on Sunday. So,
all right, that plays right into the hands of both teams.
yeah, definitely.
No pun intended. Tommy Boy ended up on the injury report. What was it, yesterday, I think, right?
I got some stupid notification today that Tom Brady wore red gloves at practice today.
He didn't practice today.
Well, he was at practice but didn't participate. And I'm like, I don't care what kind of gloves he's wearing. I don't at all. But
I'm sorry, but it's almost like I'm not trying to come off as a New England hater. I respect what they've done these past 16 years now, since 2001. But it's like, if Brady has a bad game, everyone has a built-in excuse going, oh, his hand was bad. Now, it goes both ways. Now, if they smoke Jacksonville, all the New England fans go, oh, he did that. He beat that best defense with a busted hand. I just wish he was just healthy. I wish he didn't go on the injury report. That's all.
Tom, I'm a New England fan. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, it is. It's annoying. Like, I don't want to get too sidetracked by this, but it is annoying when, like, Tom Brady throws an interception. It's never his fault. It's always the receiver's fault. They always ran the wrong route. And it is frustrating because the man's human. I mean, he's a very good human at playing football, but he makes mistakes. He has bad games. It happens.
You know what? That brings a good point, because that's why I love Tony Romo as a player, but as a commentator now, because now you're getting right in your living room, you sitting on the couch, you're seeing the game, especially since he's doing CBS, which is all the AFC games, and it gets highlighted by whatever matchup New England is in. So it's a lot of Tony trying to think, which he is an ex-quarterback in today's age of NFL football, and he kind of brings what Brady might have saw in that, and he's not afraid to go, oh, that was just a bad read, or that was off of the fingertips of the receiver. He's got to catch that. So I do like Tony commentating those games, because he's not afraid to be, oh, that was Tom's fault, or that was the receiver's fault. So it just helps. It helps the argument where, hey, that was Brady's fault.
Yeah, it helps bring reality to the game.
Yes, and that's what some people, I think, miss, is that, Tom Brady, if he cuts, he bleeds. Like, he's still human.
Right.
Like, he is susceptible to a mistake or two.
No, absolutely.
So that's why I brought in Tony about that, because the way he commentates is everyone, even if your IQ is 50, you understand that, hey, everyone can make a mistake, and Tony's going to call it how he sees it, because he's that football mentality.
No, absolutely. I love Tony Romo commentating, and I love that he does AFC games and will be doing the game Sunday. And I'm curious, Tom, as to what your thoughts about the game are. Just kind of first blush, what your opinion is.
First blush, as I've said a little bit earlier when we were talking about last week's game between Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, I have Jacksonville as my front runner representing the AFC. Defense is going to have to play for all four quarters. They cannot let up 21 points in the fourth quarter, especially to a team like New England. And they need Blake Bortles to show up like he did last week. Come, be efficient, put up some points, and hand that ball off to Fournette. Now, I know Fournette was in a fender bender yesterday or 2 days ago.
I think it was Monday.
All right. He's supposedly good. It wasn't nothing too serious.
It didn't sound like it was a big deal.
So that's good. So run the ball with Fournette. Play efficient offense with Blake Bortles. And that defense, one interception will be okay, but I think to beat New England, you need to force 2 turnovers.
I think Jacksonville needs a turnover or a special teams play. They need to get short fields for Bortles. As efficient as he was last week, as you point out, it's going to be very difficult for him to go to length of the field multiple times. And he did it last week, and believe me, I was as surprised as anybody because I didn't think he had it in him. But he got the job done. So if he can do it, then I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he can do it again. But you want to make it easy on him. The defense has been setting up the offense all year, and they need to continue to do that. For me, Jacksonville on defense, I think it's key for them to get pressure with four rushers. They couldn't do that against the Steelers, and Ben ate them alive. And Brady is known as a quick release guy, but also a guy that, again, you give a guy like that time. And New England's offensive line isn't bad, but it's not as good as Pittsburgh's. It's shaky. They've got some injuries on the right side of it. So I think there'll be opportunities there. But I think Jacksonville needs to get that pressure, especially up the middle. Brady struggles with interior pass rush.
To elaborate more on what you're saying, I'm going to go back, not to open up a scar, but I'm going to go back to those giant Patriots Super Bowls, is they were keeping their defensive line fresh, not blitzing as much, because that defensive line is fresh, and they created pressure all 4 quarters.
Yeah.
Early, often, but all 4 quarters. And I think, along with you, if they can hit Brady all 4 quarters, that's a recipe for success, because then Brady gets his own head. He starts getting mouthy with the referees, gets mouthy with himself. Rattle him early, because then come 4th quarter, he might be in his own head.
So much of New England's offense is predicated off of timing, and I think they also have to be physical with the receivers. They have to, and they're very small with their receivers outside of Gronk, who's just a freak. But their actual receivers, Cooks, Amendola, and Hogan, are small guys. Be physical with them. That's the thing that I don't think enough people do in New England receivers is hit them. It's such a timing, very finesse offense that if you can knock them off their timing and you can get pressure, then it's not going to work. I think New England, though, offensively needs to bring out different formations, and they need to use their running backs. There's a stat that I saw today from Sharp Football Analysis. Warren Sharp over there was talking about the Jaguars' defense. So when offenses come out in the standard formation in the NFL, which is the standard at this point is 1 running back, a tight end, 3 receivers, they're phenomenal. They only allow a 39% success rate, 4.9 yards per attempt, and a 73 passer rating. So that's with 3 or more receivers. When offenses have less than 3 receivers on the field, they give up 9.6 yards per attempt, a 55% success rate, and a 99 passer rating. What that tells you is that Jacksonville doesn't match up well with running backs and tight ends. And that's what New England does very well, is get the ball to Gronk, get the ball to the running backs. So I think New England, it's a James White, Deion Lewis, Rex Burkhead kind of game with some Gronkowski sprinkled in. I think it's always big on how teams cover Gronk from a week-to-week basis because he's such a physical mismatch. But I'm very interested to see how the Jaguars decide to handle him this week, because I think he's going to be a key to the game along with the running backs.
I'm looking at the New England Patriots offensive scheme for this week being based around the running backs. You're saying about the multiple formations and the pass-catching running backs. I'm actually looking at the running backs doing the damage in between the tackles.
Yeah.
They touched upon it against Buffalo. They have weakness within that, in the middle of that front 7. So I can see New England pounding the rock and finding success that way.
Yeah. I could definitely see it. I'll be curious to see if Mike Gillislee is healthy and active, because he's the more physical running back, but Burkhead has some size to him, and he's also a good between the tackles runner. And Deion Lewis frightens me in the fact that I've never seen a guy that small take on contact the way he does, so I shouldn't downplay the physical aspect of his game. I think on the flip side, I do think the Jaguars need to take a similar approach, though, as I think the running backs, I think Yeldon and Fournette could be big, because the Patriots are very thin at linebacker. They're very bad at covering horizontally. So we've talked about how good of a pass catcher TJ Yeldon is. I'd utilize that. I'd try some of those tight end leaks out there into the flat. Try to take advantage of that.
Try and get him into open space.
Yeah, because I think New England is going to try to force Bortles to throw the ball downfield. I think something they need to do that Pittsburgh wasn't able to do is get Bortles into 2nd and long, 3rd and long. He was able to put himself in 3rd and manageable. I don't think they had anything more off the top of my head, more than 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 in the game.
I can see New England trying to keep Blake Bortles in the pocket.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
that too.
He was able to, in both games, get outside the pocket, either run the ball himself or make a play downfield or mid-range route. He was playing efficient.
I think you almost have to consider putting a spy in there on him, which is kind of a weird idea because he's a pocket passer. He's not a Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Mariota type where he's naturally inclined to run, but he has some wheels on him, so I think you have to respect it.
He's pulling all the tricks out the hat for these playoffs.
Yeah. And like we said, talking about them against the Steelers, he's making the plays. Bortles going to have to make plays again with his arm, with his legs. Probably more plays than he made against Pittsburgh, and he had a very good game against Pittsburgh for what he does. I think ultimately, I think it's going to be difficult for that offense to have sustained success just because I think New England is going to do their best to take away the stuff in the flat, the inside 10-yard passes. I think they're going to try to make them throw it to the teeth of the defense. You have to make Blake Bortles throw into tight windows. That's easier said than done to force anybody to throw into tight windows, but I think that's what they have to do. Challenge him. And if he beats you that way, more power to him. But I think that's what they have to do on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they're going to have to first stop the run, though.
Yeah.
They're going to have to stack the box.
And they did a good job, as you said, against Derrick Henry, but Leonard Fournette's a whole different animal. He's probably on the cusp of a top 5 running back in the league. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but
yeah, we're not in the off season yet, so I haven't really thought about top 5s or top 10s.
But I think he's probably on the cusp of it. But my point being is he's a very good runner. He's better than Derrick Henry. There's more you have to deal with there. So, as you said, they got to stop the run, and I'm very curious to see how effective they are at it because that's going to dictate the game, both effectiveness of Jacksonville's offense and also time of possession.
Yeah, they're going to have to withstand the crowd. The crowd's going to be amped up. And when that happens, you might have to go into a silent count. So the run, Jacksonville, to run the ball is going to be premium. That's what they're going to have to get going. To find success against New England, they're going to have to run the ball. Because if you're having to line up in spread formations and shotgun, especially with that crowd rocking, it's going to be tough. Now, I know you can practice some things, but when you have the butterflies of a playoff game in the opposing team's stadium,
especially in Foxborough.
Yes, it's going to be Gillette, Foxborough, for all those new people, Foxborough used to be the home, Foxborough Stadium.
Yeah, but it's in Foxborough, Mass. That's what. Anyways,
I was just being a smartass.
All right, go ahead.
But Jacksonville needs to be able to run the ball, get the crowd out the game, and be able to have Blake have the whole playbook at his expense.
I agree. My last thought, something that I didn't think about when I was talking about New England's game plan on offense, is I think they should import a no huddle again. I like when they go up tempo. But I don't think you should go up tempo the whole game. I like when they kind of do that stop and start. They kind of go different paces. Tire out the defense because I think especially if they're going to be coming at you with the pass rushers the way they do, tire those guys out. Go no huddle. Keep them winded. Don't give them a chance to catch their breath. And I think Brady's one of the best, if not the best, in the game of managing the no huddle offense, of getting the quick snaps, catching you with 12 guys on the field. So I think that's another aspect of the game that I think New England should try to push.
Yeah, that's a good analysis, trying to push up the tempo.
Yeah, try to force them.
Because then you can't make substitutions in the back end as well. Not only you tying it out.
And you got to think faster, and it forces you into mental lapses too. So
yeah, well, muscle memory.
Exactly. So that's about all I've got on the game. I don't know if you have anything else.
Jacksonville wins, goes to the Super Bowl.
All right, you heard it here. If we're gonna do picks now, I am gonna take the Patriots. I think it'll be something like 27-16. I think it'll be close. I think New England will just find a way to make it 2 scores late, but a lot of people around here aren't taking the game that seriously, and I think they need to because that defense is legit, and that team, any team that gets to this point in the season, you have to respect, I feel. So I'm very curious to see how it plays out, but on the NFC side, we have what I feel could end up being a defensive slugfest because you got two teams that have elite defenses. You got top 5 units going at each other in Philly. It's going to be cold. It's going to be like 30 degrees. Case Keenum, I found out, is like 30 percentage points worse outdoors than in a dome this season. I saw that nugget last night.
It's a good stat line
Yup.
to put in your memory bank, Minnesota fans.
Yeah. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, that he's had issues when he has to play outside. Actually, I have the number right here. So he's got a 105.1 rating indoors and 88.7 outdoors. So it's almost 20. It's not as dramatic as I thought, but it's still a big jump. So that's something to keep an eye on. I think for both teams, I think the key is going to be who can come out with tempo. Like we saw in Minnesota last week, they were able to kind of push the Saints defense. They're able to come out quick, and I think getting Case Keenum going early is a big key to things, because I think if he can get comfortable throwing the ball, throwing downfield, I think that really sets him up for the rest of the game. I guess on the flip side, you say the same thing about Nick Foles. I think he needs to get comfortable, especially in the big moment, the NFC Championship. I think if you can give him some easy throws to start off, I think you have to set him up for success. But I guess my point being, I think I'm interested to see how both teams come out in their opening drives, first quarter.
Yeah, the Jeff Fisher Bowl. This is going to be fun to watch.
My buddy Michael Lombardi over there at the Ringer said that Jeff Fisher should do the coin toss for the game, and I really want to start I want to start a change.org petition. I want to see it.
Yeah, so this game is going to be very interesting to watch because we got two quarterbacks coming in who during the offseason of 2017 leading up into this situation now had no idea they were going to be starting in the NFC Championship. So, with that being said, this game is going to hinge on the talent that's around the quarterback. And looking at it, it's an even poll because you got Minnesota, and their defense is phenomenal, like you said. And I like the offense. Adam Thielen returned to a limited practice today. They have Stephon Diggs. I don't need to say more. Just look at the last game against New Orleans.
Kyle Rudolph.
And then Kyle Rudolph, yeah. And then you have those two running backs behind them, which is Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon. On the flip side, with Philadelphia, Nick Foles, you have Alshon Jeffrey, you have Zach Ertz, you have Torrey Smith, and you have their two running backs in Blunt and Ajayi, along with another really good defense. Damn, this is hard.
Yeah.
Because everyone had Philadelphia as an underdog last week, and I was one. I was.
You and me both.
And they came out, and they shut down Atlanta to 10 points, and as a whole played efficient on that offensive side. Nick Foles didn't throw any interceptions, didn't fumble the ball or anything. Ajayi and Blunt, they took the handoffs and produced well. Minnesota is going to have to capitalize on short fields.
Mm-hmm.
A field goal, different parts of the game might actually hurt them than not scoring points. And I say that because against this team of Philadelphia, especially on the road, you want to get scoring early, and I mean touchdowns. You want to score 14, 21 points in the first half because you want to try and eliminate this crowd, because Philadelphia fans can be the worst, if not they are the worst team to play at.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. For me, I really have a couple keys to the game. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch Alshon Jeffrey and Xavier Rhodes, because I think Rhodes is probably going to follow him around the field, I would think. So that matchup's going to be big for Philly. Although Philly, as you point out, has good weapons. You've got Ertz, you've got Aguilar, you've got Smith in the passing game. So I'll also be curious to see how Philly does against some of those other mismatches, especially Zach Ertz. Big tight ends are always difficult to deal with, and Ertz is no exception. A little sneaky point that I think could be a big factor in this game is special teams. The Eagles had a lot of special teams gaffes last week. They had the muff punt, which we talked about when we were talking about divisional weekend. They also had a missed extra point, and they kicked kickoff out of bounds.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
So I think you need to play clean on that phase of the game. You can't do what they did. You can't give Keenum a short field, whether on a turnover or a kick out of bounds.
You can't kick the ball out of bounds. I'm
The
sorry.
field is 53.5 yards wide. How do you kick it out of bounds?
A shank, I get. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you can't allow. You're right. You can't allow Minnesota, Case Keenum short fields because it's gonna come down to the talent around him. And if you're giving him the pass, well, he's got two wonderful receivers and a tight end. If you're gonna allow him to run the ball, they're efficient with McKinnon and Murray.
Yeah. I also think it'll be interesting to see if either team is able to get anything going on the run. The teams are 1-2 respectively against the run. Philly being number 1, Minnesota number 2. So I'm curious to see if anybody's able to get the run going, because I think especially for Foles, I think the run is a big ally for him. I think Keenum has shown that he could be good with his arm by himself this year. So I think it's still being balanced. I still think is a big thing, especially in a cold game like this. You want to be able to run the ball. You want to be able to be physical. So I'm not downplaying the importance for Minnesota, but I especially think for the Eagles it's important because with those running backs, you want to be able to get them going and use them as a threat.
I got an interesting question for you. What running back tandem would you rather have? I know mine.
I think I know yours too. I'd probably rather have Ajayi and Blunt
Why?
because I think Blunt is definitely a bruising running back. I like Ajayi as a pass catcher.
Is he really a pass catcher, though?
Showed it last week he can be a pass catcher.
But has he shown that all year? Even in Miami?
No, I see your point, but I think you also have to keep in mind that we talked about this last week, that the offense has completely changed. I think he's being used as a pass catcher now, whereas I think with Carson Wentz he wasn't necessarily because their offense was a lot different. So I'm kind of sidestepping your question here, but I think he has to be a pass catcher in this system.
All right, fair enough. For me, obviously, you were right. I like Minnesota's tandem between Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon because they are two totally different running backs. Latavius Murray being more your powerhouse, quote-unquote, bruiser running back in between the tackles. And then you have Jerick McKinnon, who can be either your gadget play, your toss to the outside, and best yet, he's a pass catcher and a phenomenal pass catcher as well.
Yeah, you make a good argument. I mean, I like Minnesota's running backs. I just think I like Philly's a little better. I think Blunt is the kind of guy, I saw him do it a bunch of times in New England, and he did it a little bit last week, but he can drive a pile 3 or 4 yards. And I think that's definitely, in a game, like I said, where the weather's going to be as cold and as biting, January as it's going to be in Philly, I think that's a big thing to be able to do.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's how I see it. I think I'd give the edge to Philly, but that's no way for me trying to disrespect the Minnesota tandem.
Yeah, because it's a good question because I don't see this game being like Jacksonville and Pittsburgh last week, 40 points apiece. I can definitely see another 17-10 game similar to Philadelphia-Atlanta where this game is going to dwindle down to which running back tandem produces more.
I think you could see a team hit 20 at most, but I don't think you're going to go anywhere past that. I mean, I think you're pretty spot on with that.
20 points might win you the game.
I would say so.
I like that assumption.
Yeah. But I think something else you point out I think is big is that I think touchdowns are going to be at a premium in this game. So I think when you're in the red zone, you got to capitalize.
Yeah, if they go up, let's say 9-3, Minnesota goes up 9-3 into halftime. This is just, playing hypothetical.
Sure.
The crowd is still going to be in it.
Yeah.
For me, that Philadelphia crowd hosting the NFC Championship, I know how they are because I'm a Cowboys fan, so I know how they are when they play the Cowboys. I know how it is when the division game is on the line. NFC Championship on the line, that crowd is going to be, and they're the late game, that crowd is going to be turned up to the max.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they're going to be loud like a Seattle loud, like their decibels, but they're going to be in your head where the second you step on that field, they're going to mentally and verbally abuse you as an opposing player.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Minnesota, they need to get up by 2 possessions in this game and early, like you're alluding to take the crowd out of it. And they did that last week as a Saints, but they got to play a complete game.
Yes.
I think if they're up by 2 scores on Philly, they gotta put the pedal down and they gotta keep going at it because they were able to pull that game out against the Saints.
Yeah, but that's a different team. I'm sorry to cut, but that's a different team.
No,
though,
definitely.
Because you go up 2 possessions, I don't see Nick Foles coming back scoring X amount of points in the fourth quarter like Drew Brees did.
No, that's fair.
I think if you're up two possessions, you're pretty safe.
Yeah.
As long as your defense doesn't mess up like New Orleans did, it's...
Yeah.
I don't know. I just have a tough time thinking Nick Foles throwing for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns.
I agree.
Even though he did throw 6 touchdowns. You know that, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
He was a fantasy darling that year. I think it was like 2014, circa, or 13?
13.
All right.
Yeah, 2013.
So, I guess my last thoughts on the game is turnovers obviously are going to be big in a game like this. And I also am curious to see how the Vikings, they had that big emotional swing last week at the Saints. Is that going to fuel them, or are they going to have a bit of a hangover coming out from that just because of all the emotions? So
that's a good perception. Yeah, I didn't really think about it
yeah,
like that.
It's just anytime you get charged like that, I'm just curious to see how you come out the next game. And I like Mike Zimmer as a coach, so I think he'll have them motivated, but I think it's something to bring up nonetheless. I like the Vikings in this game. I think they're a more complete team. I think when you look at the quarterbacks, I think Case Keenum doesn't get nearly the respect still that he should. I think he's good. He's definitely not a lead or anything, but he's good, and he's shown that he can get the job done. They're not dragging him through this playoffs. He's making plays himself, and I think that's something people don't understand is that he is getting the job done. He's not getting dragged through like your boy Blake Bortles was in the wild card game, say. Like, Keenum has made the plays.
Hey, he ran for 88 yards, man.
He had more rushing than passing yards, but...
Hey, he won.
That's true. I digress. I digress, because we could go at this all day. But I
understand what you're saying. Case Keenum is not a product of, let's say, a running back carrying him through the playoffs. This is Case Keenum lining up at the line, calling plays, and making plays that's allowing his team to win, and he's not getting the respect. He really isn't. But you know what, though? And I'm trying to think a little bit of ahead, because I have Minnesota as well. Minnesota goes to the Super Bowl. First team ever to host a Super Bowl in Minnesota with Jacksonville, as I already said. That's who I have winning the AFC. But now I'm really thinking ahead. Whatever happens with this game has a lot for this offseason, because you have 3 capable quarterbacks on this roster for Minnesota. Now, let's hypothetically Minnesota wins it all.
You can't get rid of Case.
This is a very weird spot, because you have a first-round talent, 2 of them actually, and Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater. One you drafted yourself, the other was a first-round pick, and then you traded a first-round pick for it, and then you have the success of Case Keenum. I guess it's a good problem to have, but
it's also an important decision to make.
Yes, but Case Keenum needs the respect he deserves. As Birdman says, put some respect on my name. But he's made plays, and he's leading his team to potentially a Super Bowl.
I love the Vikings storyline. I really like the fact that their offense is full of a bunch of cast-offs, and you got Latavius Murray, nobody wanted him. Thielen was undrafted. Diggs was like a 5th-round pick. Keenum is Keenum, as we pointed out.
A journeyman.
Yeah. I love that story. I really like the team, and I got Minnesota, although I feel like I'm disrespecting the Eagles again, but I just feel we could definitely win this game. I just think Minnesota's going to find a way.
Yeah, I'm not trying to throw any shade at Philadelphia myself or anything because they're the number one seed for a reason. But yeah, I got Minnesota, and we'll have a battle of the best defenses and see what defense is the best.
I think if my prediction comes true and we end up with a Minnesota-New England Super Bowl, I think that's going to be a fascinating chess match to watch. And granted, there's ifs there because both teams have to win, but I think Mike Zimmer's a smart coach. I think they have a smart team, and I'd be very interested to see how the Patriots would approach going against a team of that caliber on the defensive side, and also the offense, because you can't deny the talent, even if the media and the sporting community doesn't want to give them that respect.
I would like to see that matchup in a chess type thought process because it is. Zimmer's very smart. Belichick, we all know, is very smart.
And Zimmer's a defensive coach.
Yeah. And the thing that intrigues me is Thielen and Diggs versus your secondary, because early in the year, your secondary was getting obliterated.
Yeah.
And so I would like to see that type of matchup, is your secondary versus the Minnesota's receivers.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting, and I mean, we have to get to that point one way or another, or we don't.
Yeah, we were playing the hypothetical game, so that was my hypothetical intrigue was Minnesota's receivers versus Patriot secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what matchup we end up with, but before we wrap it up, Tom, you have any final thoughts about the weekend?
No, not really. I just, history was set, 7 straight with New England with their AFC championship. I don't want to come. I really don't. I don't want to come off as a New England hater. I would like a batch of new blood.
Can I say this as a Patriots fan? I feel kind of bad because I want my team to win. I always want my team to win. But at the same time, I really like this Vikings team. I feel like it's their year. I do. I feel like they're the team of destiny this year. I feel like that Diggs catch kind of solidified it in my mind. I think it's their year for it to happen. And I feel bad because I feel like if my team gets there, that they're going to ruin the party. And like, I'm very torn in that mindset.
Well, when you win as many rings as you did in a short span of time, I guess you can have that luxury.
Yeah.
But it's, and that's why I can't stress it enough. I'm not trying to sound like a New England hater. It's just I would like to see a fresh batch of teams. It was very similar to Seattle versus Denver. It felt refreshing because it was 2 new teams that we haven't really seen before.
Well, I also think that's magnified by the fact that 3 of the 4 teams left have never won a Super Bowl, and then we have New England.
Fair enough. But that's my last remark about this weekend is Minnesota, Jacksonville, Super Bowl. I hope it happens.
It would be intriguing, no doubt, and we'll wait and see if it happens, but thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Goal Line Stand. Appreciate you guys listening to all our analysis on the divisional round and conference championship. Next time we air, which will either be next week or the week after, we're going to obviously break down these games, look at the Super Bowl matchup, and probably touch on some stories from the offseason. Hopefully some coaching vacancies, one way or another, have been filled, and we'll be able to kind of discuss, what the 2018 free agency and potentially the draft could look like. So maybe try to dive into that a little bit. But thank you for listening, and have a great day.